Hi guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. It's so greatly appreciated. Truly is. Before we get started, let me give you my usual disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. Please do not take what I say as fact. Please always do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Next, if you have not liked, subscribed, or commented yet, please consider doing so. It really helps me out and I really appreciate it. So today we're talking about Rena Verk. She was born on March 10th, 1983 in View Royal, which is a quiet middle-class suburb of Victoria, British Columbia. Rena, whose name means queen, was born to parents Manjit and Suman and was the oldest of three children with a younger sister followed by a younger brother. Her family converted from Hinduism to Jehovah's Witnesses. So Rena was raised with very strict Jehovah's Witness rules. Rules that include not being allowed to celebrate Christmas, birthdays, or any holidays with a pagan origin. And not being allowed to participate in anything that they saw as unclean practices, which would include things like blood transfusions. Rena was described as being very shy and quiet. She was an incredibly well-behaved child, but all of that would change as soon as she got a little older. She was tired of not being allowed to do anything and having to follow the strict rules that were set upon her. She was also bullied on a daily basis. She had things done to her such as girls putting gum in her hair and being fat shamed on a daily basis. This girl just never got a break. So Rena, like many teens in this situation, began to rebel. She began to drink alcohol, she began to smoke weed, and she ran away from home. She would become very good friends with a girl named Missy. 14-year-old Missy was one of 12 siblings, and she was described as a tough cookie. She was thin, beautiful, popular, and she was envied by Rena. She was also known to be quite defiant, and because her parents had 11 other children to take care of, Missy would tend to fall to the wayside. Missy and Rena met in the 6th grade, and even after her family moved away, they remained close friends. Rena yearned for freedom so badly that she falsely accused her father of SA. This is because she was told by her friends that living in a foster home means that you can stay out as late as you want and that you're given money. They essentially glorified the shit out of foster care. Foster parents are employees of the state and therefore they need to answer to them. Because she reported these accusations, she was removed from the home and she was placed in the care of the state. Rena would learn the hard way that foster care was not what she was promised, and she would withdraw the false accusations against her father. And while it is good that she cleared her father's name, that doesn't change the fact that she put a major strain on their relationship. Obviously she did. These are major accusations, and these are life-destroying accusations. While in foster care, Rena would become friends with roommates Jessie and Chloe. She would also end up crossing paths with Missy when the two ended up in the same foster care system. Missy's mother would have to put her in the home after she realized that she could no longer handle her. Friday, November 14th, 1997, Rena had planned on spending the night at home because she had begun rebuilding her relationship with her parents. At some point that night, she gets a call from a friend that invites her to a party with friends of her from Shoreline Middle School, a school that is known to have troubled youth. Against her better judgment and against her parents' wishes, Rena decides to meet up with her friends that night. The Craigflower Bridge is located near the Shoreline School, and teens often hang out under that bridge because adults rarely show up there. While there, a girl from the Seven Oaks foster home named Chloe shows up, and it's at that point Rena knows that she had been tricked, she had been lured, and she was in a lot of trouble. Rena was beat that night by 7 girls and 1 boy. They hit her, kicked her, and one girl even put a cigarette out on her forehead. Finally, one of the girls that was there that night, who was described as being pretty tough, said that Rena had had enough and that they needed to stop. Rena was able to stumble away, and as she did, the teens took her purse from her. Rena was last seen crossing over the Craigflower Bridge, and as far as the teens know, everyone headed home. What the other teens didn't know was that 16-year-old Warren Golatsky and 15-year-old Kelly Ellard broke away from the group and followed Rena across the bridge. Okay, Warren Golatsky. Let's talk about him. He came from a troubled family. He was a member of the Crips. He became fascinated with street gangs, and he even started his own gang that he called Crip Mafia Cartel. His parents moved around a lot before finally deciding to separate when he was 15 years old. His mother was an alcoholic, and the last time that he saw her, she was pissed drunk in her trailer home. Not exactly your ideal role model. His father's no better. After meeting a girl in Las Vegas, he decided to move to California to live with her, leaving his son to fend for himself, minus the cash that he would throw at him from time to time to survive on. Kelly Ellard, on the other hand, she came from a very loving and supportive family. Once they caught up to Rena, the teens forced her to take off her jacket and her socks. They began beating her and stomping her on her head. Kelly smashed her head into a tree, rendering her unconscious. This attack would last 15 minutes. That's a long time. She was then dragged to the gorge waterway, which is only about an inch deep, but very muddy and murky water. While being dragged to the water, her jeans began to slip off. Kelly then held her under the water until Rena stopped moving and the water turned red. 1 hour before the beating began, Rena had called her parents to tell them that she was on her way home. So when Rena never returned home, her parents reported her missing to the police. Because of Rena's past, police treated this as a runaway, which is again one of my biggest pet peeves. I believe that every single missing person should be treated as an emergency, period, point blank, regardless of their past. Rumors began to spread that a teen had been
lots of girls in school picking fights on each other. Everybody knew that she got beat up. Nobody knew that she was dead.
When this got back to police, they went to speak with Rena's friends, and it wouldn't take long for them to get a confession. Kelly actually called her friends at the foster home the following morning to tell them what had happened. And even though the friends were sworn to secrecy, they told police everything that they needed to know. Rena and Missy would end up having a huge falling out after rumors spread that Rena had slept with her boyfriend and she was seen wearing his jacket. The other girl that Rena befriends at the home is 14-year-old Nicole Cook. Nicole was very thin, very pretty, very popular, and Rena was also very envious of her. Rena would destroy this friendship as well when she goes through her address book, calls all of her friends, and spreads false rumors about her, such as she had breast implants and AIDS. And in the 90s, AIDS was a huge, huge deal. Huge deal. The girls had had enough of Rena and they swore that they would get revenge. So Nicole, along with her best friend Kelly Ellard, had planned for at least 2 weeks prior to beat Rena up and teach her a lesson. Even though Golatsky had never met Rena, he had kicked her at least once. The following day, Golatsky showed up to his girlfriend's home, told her that something happened, that Kelly had done something to Rena, and then asked her to wash blood out of his jeans. Because of rumors that were being spread, police arrested the 8 teens that were allegedly there that night. It has been said that the teens treated this situation like a complete joke. During this whole time, they are looking for Rena, and it would actually take an entire week for Rena's body to be found. Divers would search the muddy water, but all that they found was Rena's jeans and her underwear. Hours into their search, that's all the dive team was able to uncover, so it's at that point that they decide to bring in helicopters to help search for Rena's body. 8 days after Rena's reported missing, she would be spotted by helicopter in the same river that the dive team had been searching in. Her body had floated upstream and had gotten caught in some brush. She was floating just above the surface, and she was only wearing a t-shirt. She was not visible on land. The placement of her body was only visible by air. Finding the cause of Rena's death is crucial to this case because if she died from the beating, there would be 7 people charged with her murder. But if she died from drowning, there would only be 2 people charged with her murder, Kelly Ellard and Warren Gulatsky. The medical examiner would come out to say that Rena's injuries were significant to a very deadly car crash. She had deep tissue bruising, her internal organs were bruised, and she had significant trauma to her body. Deep within the tissues of her lungs, doctors found traces of gravel, and this would tell them that Rena had indeed died from drowning. After Rena's story got national headlines, the girls that took part in the beating of Rena would be dubbed the Shoreline Six. In February of 1998, the 6 girls that were involved in the beating of Rena were tried in youth court. 3 of the girls pled guilty to assault causing bodily harm. The other 3 girls were convicted of the same offense in trial, and sentences for the girls ranged from 60 days to a year in prison. Kelly Ellard and Warren Gulatsky were charged with the of Rena. In June of 1999, Warren Gulatsky was convicted by a judge of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with an eligibility to apply for parole after 7 years. This is because of his age. In 2000, Kelly Ellard was found guilty of second-degree murder. Her sentence, however, was overturned by the Supreme Court of Canada because of technical legal grounds. A second trial for Kelly began in 2004. Kelly insisted throughout the trial that she was innocent and not a monster, claiming that she only dragged Rena to the bay so that she could splash water on her face because she was unconscious and covered in blood. Going on to say that because Rena was already unconscious, she had no reason to hold her head under the water. Except that unconscious and dead are 2 extremely different circumstances. This trial would result in a deadlock jury. So, in 2005, Kelly Ellard's 3rd trial would begin. This time around, Ellard would receive life in prison with an eligibility of parole after 7 years because of her age. Okay, so let's talk about their time behind bars. Warren would end up taking responsibility for his crimes while behind bars. He began to participate in restorative justice programs that aimed at finding reconciliation between the offenders and the victim or victims' families. During one of the sessions Warren attended, he came face to face with the parents of Rena Verk. He apologized to the Verks and explained to them that he had no particular motive for the attack.
Verk's body floated for a week before finally being discovered. 3 girls would plead guilty to causing bodily harm, and 3 others were convicted of the same offense. The trial would hear how after the first beating, Kelly Ellard and Warren Gulatsky went back to the bridge and drowned Verk. Both would be convicted of second-degree murder. Only Gulatsky would later express remorse.
I've been able to realize the hurt that I've done to people.
Through tears, the Verks accepted Warren's apology and shared a hug with Gulatsky.
After years of grief, finally forgave those who they believed showed true remorse.
I would say I felt compassion for them. as young people.
Warren Gladsky was released on full parole in 2010, and this decision was supported by Rena Verk's parents, which means that they are way better people than I am, because I would be up in arms doing everything in my power to stop this from happening, which I would, hand to God, I would. The Verks would tell Globe and Mail that they chose to forgive many of the people that were involved in their daughters, going on to say that even though it wasn't easy for them to forgive, it allowed them to let go of their anger. Suman Verk, Rena's mother, said, quote, "I think the most important reason why we've forgiven Warren is so we can just put this whole matter aside and for our own healing and sense of wholeness," end quote. Kelly Ellard would have a very different experience behind bars than Warren did. She had issues with substance misuse, and she was extremely problematic. She would also end up getting pregnant during a conjugal visit with a federal parolee. Really? She gave birth to that baby behind bars in 2016.
Was asking for up to 5 of those temporary trips per month, each one of those about 4 hours, so she could take care of parental needs. As you mentioned, she recently gave birth. Now, she was denied that request, but in a rare move, there was no decision of those 2 members. One was for, one was against, so they couldn't reach consensus. Now, Patrick Story with the Parole Board of Canada explains a little bit more.
After reviewing the file and after the rather lengthy interview today, the board members couldn't agree on what to do about the proposed escorted temporary absences. So one board member obviously wouldn't authorize them, and one board member wanted to authorize them. So it's basically a non-decision.
On August 11th, 2020, a decision was made by the parole board to release Ellard from prison, saying that she has demonstrated increased accountability for her actions and that there has been no concerns related to substance misuse or violent behaviors for many years. She is now in her late 30s, has a second child with the same father as her first, and has changed her name to Kerry Sim. On June 16th, 2018, at the age of 58, Rena Verk's mother, Suman, would pass away from a choking incident at a cafe in Victoria. All right, guys, if you're still here, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you, and I appreciate you so, so, so very much. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't yet. It really helps me out, and I really, really appreciate it. And until next time, stay safe out there.